The tale of the Skyward gaze. In a bustling community lived a figure known for their unwavering opinions on matters that rarely concern them. Their mind was a constant hum of critique, a meticulous ledger of perceived faults in others' choices. If a baker decided on a new frosting technique, this person had a strong opinion on why it was inefficient. If the town gardener opted for a particular shrub, this individual knew precisely why it was the wrong choice for that soil. And their nose, you see, it had a peculiar habit. It wasn't flat, nor was it particularly large, but it seemed to angle upwards ever so slightly, as if always looking down on things, subtly conveying a sense of inherent superiority. One sunny afternoon, a local artisan was meticulously arranging wares in a shop window, carefully aligning handmade pottery. The individual paused, observing for a moment, then leaned in, their voice carrying a tone of decisive authority. "Honestly," they declared with a faint sniff, "that display is entirely uninspired. The colors clash, and those rough textures, far too rustic. You really should arrange it by size. It's much more logical, and truly, true artistry demands precise geometry, not this haphazard array." The artisan, startled by the intrusion and the sharp critique, offered a quiet, "Thank you," though their smile faltered. As the individual walked away, feeling quite satisfied with their shared undeniable wisdom, their nose seemed to twitch, then jutted up another tiny fraction, pushing a little more skyward. It now cast a subtle, lengthening shadow. A few days later, the individual found themselves by the town pond, where a young couple was attempting to teach their small child how to skip stones. The child giggled, missing the water entirely. The individual clicked their tongue. "That's utterly the wrong technique," they announced, stepping closer, uninvited. "You need to flatten your wrist, generate more spin. You're setting that poor child up for failure by letting them flail. You should demonstrate properly, or better yet, leave such activities to those with a natural aptitude." The couple exchanged uneasy glances. As the individual resumed their stroll, convinced they'd offered vital parental guidance, their nose visibly stretched further, rising noticeably, now pointing a distinct, prominent upward angle that seemed to lead their entire head. Later that week, a neighborhood musician was practicing a new melody on their porch, the gentle strumming drifting through the air. The individual paused, listening for only a moment before interrupting with a sharp, cutting voice. "That rhythm is all wrong, and your phrasing is far too simplistic. Where is the counterpoint? Where is the emotional complexity? You should try a more intricate fugue. It would truly show artistry, not this repetitive amateurism." The musician's face tightened in annoyance, their fingers stilling on the strings. As the individual continued on their way, certain they'd offered vital artistic critique, their nose stretched further, rising noticeably, now a distinct upward angle. It pulled at their face, making their chin tilt higher. The individual's habit grew. They found themselves offering unsolicited advice to a homeowner about the shade of paint chosen for a front door, far too garish, truly. Advising a civic planner on traffic flow, utterly inefficient, a child could devise a better route, and even critiquing a neighbor's choice of sweater. It absolutely clashes with your skin tone, you know. Each piece of unwanted counsel, every sharp judgment, seemed to fuel an invisible growth within their nose. It extended further with each critical word, higher with every dismissive glance. It began to brush the lintels of doorways, then scrape against low-hanging branches. The individual had to tilt their head back further and further just to see where they were going, their neck craning at an increasingly unnatural angle. The community began to notice. At first it was whispered comments. "Pippa's nose is getting awfully high," they murmured. Then it became a source of awkwardness. People would subtly step out of the individual's path or find reasons to end conversations quickly. They learned to avoid the gaze that always seemed to come from above, the voice that always carried a hint of condescension. The individual, however, remained oblivious. Trapped in the self-reinforcing echo chamber of their own opinions, they attributed the growing distance from others to the town's perceived lack of sophistication or their inability to appreciate genuine truth. "They just can't handle honest feedback," they would muse, their nose gaining another fraction, now a foot taller than the tallest lamppost. The practical difficulties began to mount. The individual could no longer fit through standard doorways without twisting awkwardly, their nose scraping against the frames. Sitting in chairs became an exercise in extreme reclination, their head almost touching their back to keep their nose from hitting the ceiling. Eating was a challenge. They had to crane their necks so far back that food often seemed to fall down their throat rather than be comfortably chewed. Their world was physically shrinking around the axis of their own growing judgment. They ceased visiting shops or gathering places, convinced the world was simply becoming too small for their enlightened perspective. Their nose, a rigid column of unwavering opinion, continued its relentless ascent. It stretched past the highest church spire. It grew and grew and grew, until it stood in the very center of their community, a monumental testament to arrogance, as tall and imposing as the Empire State Building itself. It cast an enormous, permanent shadow across the town square, a chill falling over every gathering beneath its silent presence. The individual was utterly stuck. Their towering nose, an unyielding monument to their opinions, pinned them in place. They couldn't bend it, couldn't lower it, couldn't turn their head to see horizontally. They could only look down its incredible length at the tiny, distant people they used to scrutinize, their own world reduced to a singular, downward gaze. They saw only what lay directly beneath their judgment, missing the vibrant life that unfolded horizontally around them. The community, initially daunted by the colossal nasal presence, eventually adapted. They learned to route their paths around its immense shadow. They built new doors, new structures that acknowledged its unmoving form. The vibrant life of the town continued its hum, perhaps a little cooler in the shade, but otherwise unburdened by constant criticism. Collaborations flourished, laughter echoed, and genuine connections deepened in the spaces untouched by the towering judgment. The townspeople, no longer subject to unsolicited opinions, discovered the joy of making their own choices and finding their own harmony. And the individual, high above, encased in their own towering judgment, was utterly alone. They could not hear the laughter, could not smell the baker's fresh bread, could not feel the warmth of a shared embrace. With nothing left to see but the long, solitary view down their own perfectly straight, impossibly high nose, they remained a fixed point of self-imposed isolation, utterly removed from the rich, fluid life they had so tirelessly critiqued.